Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the bill, there is a special provision which does not exist in law today. That provision is if you live in a country, in a jurisdiction, in which you wish to homeschool your children, and the authorities in that district persecute you, don't allow you to homeschool your children, you can make a claim for asylum in the United States of America. That case was taken all the way to the Supreme Court, so I imagine that the reason it's in the bill is because the courts of the United States has not found that. So we are setting a new precedent for asylum in the United States if you're a victim of persecution because you wish to homeschool your children. My amendment says the following. We're good with homeschooling. If you're a victim of persecution for homeschooling, should be a reason to get asylum in the United States. But it also adds those fleeing domestic violence, those fleeing sexual violence, those fleeing gang violence or child abuse. In other words, I would think that at least those who are fleeing gang violence, sexual domestic violence, should have the same level of protection in obtaining asylum in the United States as those fleeing because they wish to homeschool their children. Let's just think about it a moment. Should a child, a 15-year-old child, who is being repeatedly raped, abused, who is in fear of gang members and drug dealers who permeate her neighborhood, be afforded the same protection under this as someone who is being persecuted because they wish to homeschool their children? Should a woman who has no protection under the law in her country of jurisdiction, who is consistently abused by her spouse, be given the same protection and consideration under this bill as someone who is a victim of persecution because they wish to homeschool their children? Victims of gang violence where they permeate in neighborhoods, where murder capital of the world, should they be afforded the same opportunity and protection under this law to achieve asylum as those who homeschool their children? Our colleagues in the majority have decided that homeschooling is a category that should be protected. I have no objection. But I think as we look at this and we take homeschooling and we take those that are victims of domestic violence, sexual abuse, gang and child abuse, should a victim of child abuse be afforded the same opportunity to asylum in the United States and preference in this bill as a child who was denied homeschooling and whose parents were persecuted? Just think about it a moment. I think I'm simply taking the part of the legislation in which they have a special carve-out for those who are suffering from persecution because of homeschooling and saying, okay, let's simply add asylum cases for homeschoolers. That's what it says in the bill. And victims fleeing domestic violence, sexual violence, gang violence, or child abuse. Let's go on the record whether or not we think child abuse, gang violence, sexual abuse, the exploitation of women should be a category equal to those who are fleeing because of homeschooling. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.